My name is Peter Stoilov. I'm an Associate Creative Director at Infusion, roughly the same time as you have been here, about 8 years. I also have a team of designers here in Toronto and a few folks out in Krakow, out in Poland. So it's our team is as big as sort of decentralized, but that's sort of a good thing. We have a global coverage. I wanted to include, just for kicks here, a few mobile projects that I worked on over the years, and intentionally starting with one of my oldest ones, probably the first one I worked on with the deco up at the top. And it looks sort of hideous when I look at it now in comparison to some of the stuff in the forefront. But the point of this was to see how much things have changed in the last 7 or 8 years since I started playing with these. So today we'll take a look at a few sort of trends that are emerging that have sort of continued through from previous years. I mean, as any trend in any other industry, this is not something we all agree on starting on a particular date. That's something that we identify as already kind of happening in the world, and we see it continuing or ending in some cases. So we'll kind of cover both of those. But the important thing, of course, is to notice there is that with mobile, one of those breakthroughs, I guess, or one of those technologies that was really transformative in so many ways, and we don't even realize it. I mean, besides the obvious, just sort of every day, every hour, every minute engagement that we have with it, the transformation really is the ability of the mobile device to take a popular feature and make it a necessity, and something that people often go to their phones first to solve a problem rather than elsewhere. So, you know, going for a calculator this morning on my phone, even though I have a calculator on the computer, checking for things like, you know, searching for something that you might have forgotten and so on, calendars, all that stuff. So it's really a go-to device for most of our problem-solving tasks. And sort of there's a combination of that and the cultural shift. So you kind of have your traditions, you sort of like your social norms, like some places may not be polite to do so, but we've sort of done it anyways, and it's really transformed the culture, but it's also picked up from those habits, and it's really starting to influence the trends in that respect. So some cultures are more receptive to it, other ones not so much. So some of the things we're going to look at, I'll kind of group in a few categories. So this one is purely visual, aesthetics driven, design driven. So the reference there to the Kanye shoes, it's style only, but funny enough, it has to do with a perception of appearance, but it's really kind of goes deeper than that. It's really an emotional connection that we make with these devices. Otherwise, it would just be a bunch of pixels on the screen. There's certainly been a tendency to go big and sort of retract and go big again with some of the color selections and palettes, and you know, do we go flat design? Do we go kind of skeuomorphic, try to mimic some of the textures in real life? So we'll continue to see that going forward. I mean, there's certainly now space for both of them to coexist. There's no one versus the other. I mean, you could choose to do a very muted kind of color scheme for a nice, comfortable looking kind of quiet weather app, or you can go quite loud with an app here for your dog. Some people kind of tend to blend the two, so you kind of pick up on both here with the pastels and the sort of louder colors. We're going to see a little bit more shift towards content-driven layouts, or content-first layout. So letting the interface really fall back and almost disappear. So it's mostly representative of a shift that some of the publishers, some of the sort of magazines, the kind of the glossy publications out there really initially drove. But certainly now it's been embraced by other industries and other applications. So if I take away the image, I got nothing. I got just a blank screen. So it's really about the content, the quality of the content, how engaging it is, how important, how contextually relevant it is to me. We're seeing very light sort of interface elements here and there. I mean, the map itself is interactive, so that's good. But really, this is again a shift to try to accommodate two things. So we went flat to the point where there's hardly any interface, and we're now trying to gain that back by introducing some of the real textures and colors and the shapes of the real world back into the app, but not to try to have the app pretend to be something else it's not. It's delivering something that's actually real. So that's where the connection is a lot more obvious. It's really a response to a bit of a monotonous sort of look and feel of the apps in the last few years, and then sure enough, people sort of rebounded from that, tried different things. So this is just a way to present very simple content in a delightful manner. There's interaction, they're intuitive, they're there when you need them, they disappear when you don't. Again, a lot of these examples are things that I've found interesting. It's not necessarily something I put together, but this is kind of the way we like to model our own interaction style guides and guidelines and so on when we work with our development teams. So you'll see a lot of Infusion work looking like this on about halfway through a project. Another move is towards a bit more complex layout. So this one is a bit obviously scaled for a tablet. It's not to say that it wouldn't live on a mobile device, on a handheld, but we're kind of looking at something that could have easily be just shifted to the left, center line, and be done with it. But they're really kind of exploring the more traditional graphic design rules, things that you see in posters, like the movie posters out there, traditional typography-driven posters. This particular thing is a website for a holdings company. They do a lot of clothing lines. And what they have actually offered on the front page that I didn't capture is a fully sort of animated experience that kind of follows the navigation at the bottom. So I paused it, took a screen grab of that. So if you guys want to play around with that, it's quite nice. And that one particularly lives on the web, and it's one of the good examples that I liked, even though we're talking mobile. But sure enough, you see in the menu in the corner that looks just like anything you'll see on your iPad. And typography, it's always been there. It's really taken a step forward now with a lot of these apps. These two is mostly about identity, although there's some level of communication there. The first one is all about communication and just practicality, but they could have easily shoved a lot more data on the screen, make it a table, a list view, or something more simple like that. But they decided to really take advantage of the space, and there's something that creates a bit of an emotional attachment where you have like a couple feet of a wave cresting there versus something that's 20-foot wave on a big swell. So when you see the app, and that's probably a prompt to pack your car and drive down to the beach if you're close by. So it's intentional, all that dead space in there. We'll talk about quickly a few of the changing business structures and business models out there, and I couldn't make up my mind which slide looked better, so you get to see both. I think the second one kind of speaks to where we had it a little bit more so than the more cliche one that I started with. These are kind of things that I just off the top of my head, I wrote down on what makes mobile mobile. Like what are the unique capabilities and features and sort of attachments that we have with it. If you read through it, there's intentional contradictions, and I can pick up on a couple of these, but we spend a lot of effort to make these things practical and functional. We save time only to spend it watching some cat videos on YouTube. So it's a real trade-off on where we're actually spending our time. So I can do my timesheets in 5 minutes, pay my bills without going to the bank, but then I'm going to watch YouTube for a while and just watch stuff I've already seen a year ago. So local versus global, I can see what's happening right now, but I can see what's happening on the other end of the world immediately. And again, there's sort of that dichotomy of the entertaining versus the boring. So I'm sure you've experienced that when you pick up your phone and you feel like, there's nothing to look at. It's almost like you've looked at anything possible and just kind of put it back down. So I've experienced those moments, especially when I'm flying and I lose connectivity, and it's like, well, what is this good for? There's no internet anymore. It doesn't do anything. So there's sort of that kind of thing happening with mobile all the time. The last line is actually kind of nicely tags on to what Jeremy was talking about. So there's a lot of features in those mobile devices, but we're not really using it to the full capabilities. There's just kind of reduced to single touch in some cases and just kind of looking at something passively while you're holding the device. So lots of opportunities for new businesses to make their way and make their mark, be seen out in the marketplace. We've helped some people transform their business. We're currently in the process of doing that with one company. And it's all purely just driven by mobile, nothing else. If you look at the top 20, I sort of cut it off a bit at the bottom, but the top 20 most top performers for today, it's not surprising that these are the apps that do the things that I've listed above. So they really focus on a problem that we all either experience, we don't know we've experienced, but as soon as we see it, we kind of gravitate to it. So it's sort of the iPod sort of phenomenon where I didn't think I needed 1,000 songs, but now that I have it, it's amazing. So it's kind of the same idea here, where most of them are communication and social network sort of things, and you see things that for a bit become top one. They're really sort of a trending thing for a little while, but then they kind of drop off. And it's really the big players that are always there. Like these guys have been there for a while, like Facebook, Gmail. There's below the fold is Uber as well. So what does that really teach us? I mean, these are interesting examples. There's really the common factor there is someone's identified a problem. Maybe they didn't even know they were solving a problem that a lot of people had, and really hit it sort of an emotional connection with a lot of people. So the competitive advantage there, I guess, to explain the title, is that if you go with that kind of design mentality, and you probably will be successful in being one of the top apps. So the trend will continue to be in that direction, where you kind of trying to drive design first and launch and see how it goes. We mentioned Uber earlier. I've had a lot of trips this year already where I've taken Uber and Lyft. For a variety of reasons. The drivers are super open and super chatty, and you kind of get to learn a lot about them. And I took a ride the other week with someone who grew up with Joe Carter from the Blue Jays, and so we kind of had to talk about that. The one thing I learned though is pretty much every fifth driver was their first day driving. So I didn't know how to take that. It's just becoming so popular. I guess everyone's picking it up, or should I be worried because you don't know what you're doing? It's your first day driving. In one case, a lady said, my friend signed me up, and I basically started driving. So that was exactly what he talked about with the cognitive services. But I digress. So it's the topic here is about the model, the business model changing towards a economy where there's a lot of sharing, there's a lot of on-demand, instant. Just I want it now. I don't want to wait. Somebody better get it done. The flip side is there's a lot of opportunity to get that done. So you kind of have those food deliveries. That's the Instacart. Lyft, Uber, I talked about, and then we have Feast, which is something where we had a presentation on Infusion, and I picked it up and I used it in the summer quite a bit. It was great service. You just order, they meet you downstairs, and you don't, it's already paid through the app and all that stuff. So it's great. As I just said, it's paid through the app. So are we getting rid of cash? Probably not. So it's there's an interesting a part of my personality, but also my job as a designer to consider both sides and sort of play devil's advocate, but sort of, be super digital and super technology here, and then the exact opposite when I'm at home. So you kind of have to have that understanding of both sides and where people really fit in. My in-laws do not pay or use any kind of payments online. They walk to the bank, they wait in line, they do that. Even though they have Android phones and they're better than what I have, and so on, they just don't do it. So it's a cultural thing, it's an age thing, I guess, maybe generational, whatnot. It's trust as well. Like, really building trust. You hear in the news every night that something's happened, right? Like, so it kind of ruins the reputation. And the other side is, for those of you that travel the world, like, cash is king. Anywhere you go, you have some money in your pocket, you can get through. Cell phone batteries may die, your account might not be accessible, they might suspect fraud, they might just shut it down for you if you're in Thailand and trying to withdraw money. So there's a variety of things that could go wrong. I got blocked in Vegas actually for making a $20 purchase at a Walgreens, but I was allowed to pay for a helicopter ride. So I don't know how they figured that out. Those Walgreens. Amazon Go, you guys have probably seen that. They just built a real store, so they went backwards. They were an online-only sort of a virtual service for quite a while. They have the warehouses that are huge, but now they're going into real retail. So the whole premise around that is, again, just driven by mobile. If there was no mobile, how would you do that? Well, we've entertained some ideas with a few of the banks here. You could have simply just scanned your Visa card or whatever on the way in and just accomplished the exact same thing, but it's a lot more attractive. It's a lot more immediate. You can sort of on your way there order the things you want or whatever, and just pick them up and leave. So that's kind of a fun exploratory thing, see where it goes. I mean, the trend is certainly to try some of these payment-free and cashless kind of shopping interactions. Product interaction. So the tendency here, of course, is that everything we're talking in terms of user experience design is to provide the user some connection to a machine, I guess. So when you look at some of the craftsmanship with some of these devices that are preceded the digital world, and this is a Leica here, and it's sort of seen as one of the sort of the pinnacle of the photography world, I guess. And a lot of people sort of just praise it for its quality and just workmanship, and everything down to the the little details around that has been really thought through and crafted. The weight of the camera, like holding it by the lens as opposed to the body, it's a different feel. So you kind of feel like more in the action versus doing something else in a more passive mode. So the reason why I'm kind of explaining that is that the tendency has been that everything kind of looks and feels the same in the digital space. There's a lot of just buttons, and everything feels like glass. Like my interaction with my bank account feels the same as my posting pictures and the same as talking to people. So my fingers don't know any different. My phone always weighs the same. So there's no really like an emotional drive there. So how do we turn that around? How do we go deeper and kind of provide a digital experience that kind of mimics the real experience we're looking for? Micro interactions, we talked about them for a while. I think 2015 or so, like was kind of a buzzword. We want to go a level deeper. So that's sort of the equivalent of, talking, well, if you look at the example below, we compare two devices. It requires a number of steps. So from a user experience standpoint, you want to minimize these steps and make every one of them delightful if you really want to and need to do it. So sort of going from the micro interaction to the micro mini, or the double micro, whatever you want to call it. That's where a lot of our attention is focused on, and you'll see over the next year or so, hopefully in the next few years, that there's a real change sort of coming out in the way we interact with applications. And here's one quick example of like the menu itself is just a small detail of just doing that. It tells you where the menu is, tells you where the top of the page is. It maybe makes you smile the first time you see it, but then you kind of know where it is, and you sort of, that is your micro interaction for that little bit, or micro mini in this case. There's a couple other examples here that I've found that are quite nice. The one on I guess on your left is quite simple. There's sort of a loading kind of starting screen, looks like, brings in your results, shows you what you've done in your workout today. This one here is actually getting quite elaborate. So there's a few micro interactions. They have the micro mini within that. So there's really a lot of levels of software interaction and a visual interaction that happens at this point. So am I going to do that for a City of Toronto website? Maybe not, but why not? Maybe it's fun to do that and kind of open the schedule for your local community center instead of just looking at a table. It really builds the value there. So another little bit of kind of an unusual one that I came across, and again, it's probably driven by this kind of attachment that people have now to their devices, and it's quite personal, and it's your phone, and it's just yours. It almost reminds me of like, when you're younger and you have a pet, and it's kind of like, oh wow, I have a kitten now, and it's like, I'm going to take care of it. And then we've seen this, the trend back in the 90s or whatever with the Tamagotchis when we have the digital pets and so on. So it feels like there's really a nice little wave kind of to try to do something similar with the mobile devices. So one of the older examples, of course, is the mechanical watches. You kind of had to wind your watch, put it in your night table before you go to sleep. Otherwise, it would just stop working overnight. So you kind of had to take care of devices. Pretty much the only thing we do now, probably for mobile, is to charge it, make sure the battery is not done. And that becomes a sort of a subliminal tending thing that you're always kind of looking at the battery levels, and when it's at 10%, you got to do a quick charge, just so it doesn't go dead. Not necessarily a good example. I kind of found it a bit hard to find the good examples there, so they're too calm. I guess maybe if we do one of these next year, we'll have some good examples to look at. But a little kind of a tending thing there, just kind of checking on well, this is for you, for your own health, but in a way it feels like you're always, making sure your device is kind of up to date with your drinking of water throughout the day. Evolving technology. So here's where we kind of connect a little bit with what was said earlier. CES this year. I mean, there's a lot of talk about voice controlled everything. Pretty much the voice communication, voice commands are put into pretty much any device that can handle it. So there's a lot of appliances that have that. I mean, it's in your mobile. So in a sense, there was a real, software kind of software outshined the hardware offerings that they had at CES. So some people were really drawn to that. For us, what does that mean as designers? We're basically told now that there's possibly 2 or 3 different ways somebody can interact with your application. So as you're building applications, you should probably consider how this will be controlled by a word, how would it be perceived visually without interacting, and how can you kind of combine the two and still have like the touch interface be available when needed. So that's a real challenge, but the trend is to kind of simplify things and kind of provide these 3 entry points for those that wish to use it. The products and services, so that's also something that on the flip side then needs to be thought about. So there's a lot of strategizing that needs to happen, and that's certainly where we headed this year. And again, we talked about the data and sort of the artificial intelligence behind it to make it all happen. Now, from a technology standpoint, I'm excited about artificial intelligence and all the work that's gone into it and really seeing it work and become quite prevalent. But from a user experience standpoint, it feels like it's broken still. So not because the individual pieces aren't working, it's just they're not working together. So you have this kind of sense of having all these digital assistants, but they don't talk to each other, or they're not helping each other. They're not dividing labor accordingly. And, perhaps Siri is friends with Alexa and she could order stuff for me, and Watson can figure out some knowledge that I need to know for my science class. So they, it's almost like that delegating the tasks to different assistants and different devices. It's kind of the next wave that we're looking to see before they really become a big hit with sort of the mass crowd and the average consumer. We tend to lose sight of that. Being in a technology company, we think we're so close to, we see the new stuff coming through, so we think that everybody loves it and likes it, and they're kind of jumping on board. But that's really some of the pivotal points aren't there yet for everyone to embrace it fully. And again, it's probably driven by a business model that we're currently changing. Growing user base, that's inevitable. More and more people are using mobile. More and more people are online. More and more people are online on their mobile. So that's a bit of a statistic here that I grabbed from a report recently, that we've kind of got to the tipping point of over half of our population is now online. What does that mean? Of course, a lot of opportunity, but it also means a lot of people are new to it. A lot of people for the first time are going online. For the first time, probably using mobile to go online. Data is quite expensive. I mean, we complain in Canada about our cell phone plans and whatnot, but you kind of look around and some people just literally don't have access to it. And I travel once in a while to Cuba. I have friends there. I've lived there in the past. So it's a place where people carry 2 cell phones or 3, and one is for data and the other one's for texting and voice. And I got on a phone call with a friend and I started chatting, and he goes, "Can you just hang up and come over to my house?" So it was, it's a luxury that we have here that we think everyone's online and kind of browsing stuff aimlessly. So what does that mean though? New people, new experiences, they will probably not be familiar with some of the experience that a lot of us have had over the last 10 years of having a mobile, for example. So we need to focus on better understanding the fail paths, not just the success paths. So typically, user experience designers will actually build a journey map when we're designing the software, and we're informing our developers how to build it, but we're also deciding on a best case scenario where someone opens the app, they log in, they know where to go, they know what to do, and they're done. That's not the case. Most of the time, there's fail points. There's a lot of kind of error messaging that needs to be communicated. So you continue seeing these kind of things where we're trying to be friendlier and helpful to the new user, but also explain some of those empty states and just error messages and kind of dead ends that people might encounter. So The cartoons, hey, there's different ways to go about styling that. I mean, this is probably a good way to be perceived as being friendly and helpful, so I'm not necessarily opposed to it. It does have a personality. I mean, Google's kind of chosen those little, black and white drawings, but certainly the point is that we need to help guide users in the case where they fail to appreciate the full experience. A couple more slides. We're getting into a stage where we don't need to necessarily, I guess, rely on the user to self-direct. We can use the devices and their capabilities to direct them in the right place and adjust to their needs. So we talked about some of the technology that might be quite useful to determine, who's using the device, who are they, how old are they. There's a few examples that I looked at some biometric software that obviously need to agree to put on your phone, but for tracking and sort of research purposes, what has been done is quite phenomenal, and they can kind of figure out from the way that you pick up your device, the way you hold it, how frantically you tap on the screen, what's running while you're doing that is also another connecting point. But they can sort of figure out what kind of state of mind you're in, or how old you are, perhaps how strong you are, how athletic, even like how quickly you're moving, or are you just sitting down and watching something. So I jokingly proposed an Apple Watch thing for one of our clients, and they're a bank again. I proposed that they keep track of the pulse. So I guess the phone can track your heart rate and so on, and try to correlate that with when you open your bill on your phone. So if you see your bank statement and your pulse just goes through the roof, just hit them with a marketing message about lowering their interest rate and stuff like that. So it's they laugh, but then they're like, well, that actually could make sense if we can get it to work. So there's a lot of this sort of, it combines artificial intelligence, machine learning. We know who you are. You just did something, and then something happens. So there's a real cause and effect, and then you can respond to that very contextually and in a weird way. And first time you get that message, you might be kind of weirded out a bit by why and how they knew that. But again, it's a digital world, and there's a certain level of magic in it that we need to maintain, and sometimes it's appropriate to do that. That's it. If you guys want to sort of go back, we can kind of cover some of those slides if you had any questions or kind of comments on that. But hopefully that's been enjoyable to see where we headed this year.